Hey everybody, it's Austin Solomon, the Solomon Group at Coldwell Banker. Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Wausau Real Estate Show. Today we're talking about what is a bump clause. If you're selling a house, if you're buying a home, or if you're going to use the approach of making an offer subject to your home selling, you're going to want to know what a bump clause is. Where we commonly see this is, I'm just going to use an example. If the owner of a $150,000 house wants to purchase a $300,000 house, but needs to sell their home first, that's when you're going to see this verbiage around a bump clause. So the offer is made, again, that $150,000 buyer is telling the seller, hey, I'll buy your house as long as my home sells by this date. For example, 60 days out. So when that offer comes in, the $300,000 seller, the house that buyer's looking to purchase, that seller is thinking, okay, I like having this offer, right? They gave me an offer, which is great, but what happens if this $150,000 house doesn't sell? What happens if I wait 60 days for them to sell and they don't sell it? I could lose all that time on the market, and I might be back to square one in 60 days if their home doesn't sell. Okay, enter the bump clause. The bump clause, what that allows the seller to do is kind of mitigate some of that risk associated to that first buyer, mitigate that risk around that first buyer's home not selling. So instead of taking their home completely off the market during that 60-day period where that $150,000 homeowner is trying to sell their house, instead of taking their house off the market during that time, what they can do is continue to market it and show to other prospective buyers during that time. And if another offer comes in and the seller likes that offer better, the seller can effectively go back to the first buyer, request they remove the home sale contingency, and if they can't, the seller can make the second offer primary. That's what the basic bump clause is. So again, just to kind of recap, $150,000 homeowner looks to buy that $300,000 house. They say, hey, I'll take your house, but I got to sell my house first. Let's do closing in 60 days. Right? For that $300,000 homeowner, that's a lot of risk to wait 60 days. So they might say, hey, yeah, I'll let you, we can make this work. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to, I'll accept this offer. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to market, show the house. And if someone else comes in with a really good offer and they don't have to sell a house, I'm going to come back to you and ask you to remove your home sale contingency. Otherwise, I'm going to go the other direction. So that's a basic bump clause. Now you might be thinking like, why would the buyer allow themselves to be bumped, right? So if they make an offer, why would they include that bump clause? Like, why would they allow themselves to potentially be bumped from the offer? Well, if it's not in there, then the seller may not be willing to entertain it because, again, then they're holding out for 60 days without any guarantees. So the bump allows some of the risk of waiting for the buyer's home to sell to go away, but the seller, still has the option to continue to market and show the house and sell the home to another party. So let me give you an example of what that would look like. So let's say, again, $150,000 person says, hey, $300,000 house, I'll take it, subject to my house selling, right? And, so they get an accepted offer, and then a week later, a cash buyer comes in, they're like, hey, I'll give you $320 for your house. Seller's like, holy cow, I'll take that. Well, the seller can't just bump the other party. They have to go back to that $150,000 buyer and say, hey, we had another offer come in. You have to remove your home sale contingency and, potentially provide more info or documentation depending on what's in the offer. And if you don't, then I'm going with this other offer. So if the buyer at that point say like, we really don't want to, but I'm going to swing both homes, forget about my home sale. We can do a bump, we can do a bridge loan, or we can come up with cash to purchase your house without, our house selling. Then at that point, that $150,000 buyer might say, we're moving forward regardless if our home sells or not. And then that $300,000 home seller, they have to move forward with those first buyers. They have to tell the $320,000 cash offer to that, hey, they removed their home sale contingency. We can't, make you primary at this time. So, okay, that's what a bump is. Here's a couple of tips. If you're making an offer with a bump clause as a buyer, here's a couple of tips. You want to specify in the offer, let the seller know that, let them know what you're selling. For example, let them know that, hey, we have this kind of house and we're going to be pricing it at this. And we think it's going to be selling quick. That just kind of provides some context for all parties. Kind of set a price, be prepared so that when you are making that offer, all parties, the other agent, the seller, can be comfortable. And then also in the offer, you'll want to specify that once you get an accepted offer on that $150,000 house, once you get a pending contract, the seller can no longer bump you. And that's a good strategy is, once they accept an offer, once you, market and get an accepted offer on your home as the buyer at 150, then the seller can't use that bump clause to boost you out. So, strong agent and some verbiage will put that in there. So that's a tip. And then also, just kind of, again, you might even throw something in the offer that says, hey, we're going to have our house listed for a price no more than, X within 7 days with a realtor. So you're just kind of, it shows that you're ready to rock and roll. You're motivated. You're going to make things happen. So again, sellers don't really like home sale contingencies, but if you have some of these tips, it can certainly help. So tips for sellers. Now, if on the selling end, let's say you have a really any scale of home, it could be 100, 200, 300, 400. You tend to see more home sale contingencies when you get into that upper price point. But tips for sellers is that when you're looking at a bump, you want to make sure that your agent checks into the home that they are selling to see if it's saleable and what price they're going to be listing it at. The last thing you want to do is to accept an offer and they try to again, as a seller, you accept an offer subject to a home sale and then the owners put it for sale by owner for a crazy price. That could be problematic. So, number 2 is that you request that in the case that the buyers are bumped, that the buyers provide proof they can purchase your home without selling. So, if you're able to, in our example, if the seller of that $300,000 house, if another offer comes in, you want to be able to go back to that first buyer and tell them, definitively hey, you remove your home sale contingency and provide us proof that you can purchase my house without your home selling. Otherwise, I'm going with this other offer. You don't want to leave it up for interpretation. So you just want to make sure that you have that a clear game plan if another offer does come in. Okay. So here's just kind of something to know as well around the bump is if you're a seller, the downside to accepting an offer with a home sale contingency is the status of the house has to change to reflect that. And so it would say active with bump. And sometimes that extra, having that extra piece in the as the status or as a buyer who's looking at that house and says, hey, this one has an offer subject to a bump, right? The agent and the buyer would know that there's still a potential option that it's open, you could still purchase that house, but there's a lot more work that goes into that. And because there's a chance that those primary buyers remove their home sale contingency, a buyer that sees that might say I don't know if we want to go through that hassle, versus a house that just hit the market, doesn't have any other offers, right? So sometimes it can slow down showings. There's a term in the real estate space. Sometimes I've heard it called the kiss of death. Is a home sale having a home sale contingent offer, in what pertaining to what it can do to the future amount of showings and activity. So that's just something you have to weigh, though. But at the same token, too, right? A home sale contingency, accepting an offer with the home sale contingency also works out a lot of times, and we do it all the time, and it can help you. It's another option to get the home sold, and oftentimes a good option. So So that's what a home sale contingency and a bump clause is. Those are some tips for buyers and sellers when you have a home to sell, or if you're looking to purchase and you have to sell your house as part of the purchase. So hopefully that's helpful. If you guys have any questions around this, feel free to let me know. This is one area where there is quite a bit of confusion. It's a little bit tricky to explain. So if you guys need anything, just drop me a note. Would love to help you. So thanks again, guys, and we'll catch you on next week's episode of the show.